I flew in the night before her graduation. No banners, no flowers at the gate, just a cold lift ride from the airport and a key left in a lockbox outside the guest room. That morning I ironed my dress while my hands shook harder than the steamer. I told myself it was the jet lag, told myself it was the lack of sleep, but truthfully, something already felt off. And I hadn't seen my husband yet. Not since our last phone call 2 weeks ago. He'd said, "Don't worry, everything's taken care of." I should have asked, what exactly? We met at the restaurant just off campus. Lily looked radiant, tired but proud. Her curls pulled back, her gown wrinkled in that charming, rushed way. Daniel was already seated, laughing with her advisor, like he belonged there more than I did. I kissed her cheek, slid into the empty seat. The menu was preset, 3 courses, polite smiles. Lily said thank you over and over. "We made it," she kept saying. And then came dessert. That was when she tilted her head slightly and asked, voice soft like a joke, "Why did your husband erase you?" I froze. Daniel didn't look up. The advisor laughed awkwardly, assuming it was some family banter he didn't understand. My fork paused midair. "Sorry?" I said. Lily blinked. "You know, from the judgment, it says your name was removed. That's what the clerk told Mia. Mia. Her friend who worked at the county records office. Her friend who sent her a copy of the sealed document because she thought I already knew, because apparently everyone else did." I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I handed Lily a napkin. "There's lipstick," I said. Her hand trembled slightly as she took it. After lunch, I walked. Miles, maybe. I didn't count. At some point, I ended up at a strip of cafes near campus, ordered a tea I didn't drink, connected to Wi-Fi, opened the link Lily had texted. It was a PDF. 76 pages. Title, Judgment of Dissolution. Finalized. Filed under Daniel Palmer v. Emily Palmer. Me, my name, my marriage. Finalized 2 months ago. I scrolled. First page, Daniel's signature. Second page, court approval. Third page, declaration. Respondent not present, served by alternative method. I blinked. Alternative method. They had mailed it to the old address, one I hadn't used since 2021. The file said I'd failed to appear, that I had not contested, that the division of assets had been agreed upon via electronic consent. No mention of my actual email, no calls, no messages, just consent. And then came the property division page, the house. His name only. Retirement accounts, split 80/20ths, his favor, medical debts, all mine. And tucked near the end, in small print, irrevocable. I closed my eyes. Not because I was tired, but because something inside me, something fundamental, had stopped functioning. My marriage ended by omission. Not a fight, not a lawyer's letter, just silence. Or worse, false paperwork and forged convenience. Daniel had always been gentle with cruelty. He never yelled. He let things drift. When we argued, he let me tire myself out. When I cried, he said, "Let's not make this dramatic." When I carried the finances for 3 years while he pivoted, he called it partnership. When I signed those health insurance renewals, those tax forms, those refinancing documents, God, I remembered now. That day I came back from a double shift and he said, "Just initial here on. I filled it out already. I didn't even check. I trusted him. I was exhausted, and he counted on that." The erasure hadn't started with the court. It started long before. When he stopped asking me about decisions, when he made Lily his confidant, when he started saying my house instead of ours. The court filing was just the final act. But Lily, she didn't know. She thought I was part of it. That I'd stepped aside, let it all dissolve peacefully. She thought I'd agreed, because he told her I had. "She wants this to be simple," he must have said. "Let's not make it harder than it needs to be." I sat with the document open on my phone for 10 minutes. Maybe more. Then I forwarded it to myself. I stared at my inbox. One unread message. From Lily, sent just after lunch. "I didn't mean to upset you. I thought you knew." I didn't reply. I just typed back one line. "Thank you for telling me." Then I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted the truth written down, notarized, unerasable. The lawyer's office was in a converted Victorian home, the kind with creaky floors and overwatered plants in every corner. Her name was Marissa Nguyen, calm voice, firm eyes. I didn't cry in front of her. I didn't even flinch. I just slid my phone across the desk and let her read the document. She scrolled for a while, then leaned back, fingers steepled. This, this is clean, she said, not like a compliment, more like a warning. Too clean. She asked when I'd last seen any court-related mail. I told her almost 2 years ago we'd switched to paperless billing, or so Daniel said. That he was streamlining things. I'd trusted him to manage the paperwork so I could focus on work, on Lily's tuition, on sleep. Marissa didn't judge me. She asked if I remembered signing anything about mediation, asset division, acknowledgement of service. I said no. She nodded like she already knew. She asked if I had any documentation to prove ongoing financial involvement, joint accounts, shared bills, property tax payments. I said yes. I had everything. I had the receipts, the statements, the digital trails, not because I thought I'd need them, but because I was always the one who paid. Then we have a starting point, she said. But it'll be uphill. He used every loophole available. Someone coached him. I nodded. Of course someone did. Probably his sister. Hannah had always worked in real estate, knew the probate codes like scripture. She once bragged about helping her friend push a co-owner out of a shared condo using a friendly default strategy. I remembered that term now. Friendly default. That was what they'd done to me. Back home, if I could still call it, that the guest room felt smaller. Like the walls had learned how to lean inward. Daniel was gone when I returned. A note on the fridge. Staying at the lake house for the weekend. Hope lunch went okay. Let's talk Monday. He had signed it with a dash. Not a name, not D, just a line. As if erasure was now his entire language. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the dining table where we'd once hosted Lily's 10th birthday. Back when we still believed in themes and centerpieces. I stared at the placemats. Beige with little stitched leaves his mother's gift. I didn't touch them. I just opened my laptop, pulled up every payment I'd made in the last year, $1,200 to cover Lily's rent, $680 to pay the copay for Daniel's surgery last winter, $400 monthly to the utilities account. He hadn't stopped me from paying. He'd let me shoulder the obligations of a wife while quietly removing the title. He took the house, but left me the bills. He took my name off the deed, but left it on the thermostat login. I was still managing the heat for a home I no longer legally lived in. Somewhere between page 3 and 4 of my bank statements, I stopped. The lights in the hallway buzzed faintly, a sound I'd heard 1,000 times but never listened to. I got up, opened the hall closet, pulled out the box labeled Taxes 2020-2022. At the very bottom were the documents from our last joint filing. My signature was there, real, but stapled beneath was a property transfer authorization with my name digital, blurred. I'd never seen it before. But the date matched that night he asked me to review just one page while I was in bed recovering from a double shift. It's just a refi, he'd said. I've filled everything in, just click approve. I clicked, groggy, trusting. I didn't read the attachments. My hands shook as I snapped a photo and emailed it to Marissa. Subject line, he started earlier than we thought. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, watching the digital clock on the microwave blink its neon green heartbeat. At 3:11 a.m., Lily texted, Mom, I'm sorry. No punctuation, just that. I stared at the message. I knew she didn't mean to hurt me. But that was the thing about betrayal. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. Most times it comes in a napkin, folded and passed across a table. Quiet, painless, until it isn't. I replied, You don't need to apologize. Then I added, But thank you for asking the question. She replied instantly, Did you know? I didn't answer. I just turned the phone face down. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be spoken. It just needs to stop being ignored. By Monday morning, Daniel still hadn't returned from the lake house. No call, no message. Just his absence, sitting at the edge of the bed like a silent guest who refused to leave. Marissa's reply came at 8:14 a.m., crisp and direct. This changes the timeline. We need everything from the refinance year. I'll draft a petition to reopen. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Then I opened another cabinet, another drawer, another envelope. I spent hours chasing ghosts, his initials tucked into margins, documents with missing pages, statements where numbers no longer matched the records in my own files. At 11:32, I found the folder, hidden inside a plain manila sleeve marked insurance. It held the revised deed transfer, fully notarized, legally binding, and dated during a week I remember being hospitalized with pneumonia. I'd been asleep for most of that week. I remember the smell of antiseptic and the click of IV machines. I didn't remember signing anything, but there it was, my name in wet ink. A signature that looked close enough to pass if no one looked too hard. But I did. I compared it with my actual signature from a certified form I found in a tax file. The loops were different, the tail on the Y too long. I sent both to Marissa. Her reply, "Get a forensic handwriting analyst. Now." I made the call, booked the appointment. Then I sat in the laundry room, because it was the only place Daniel never touched, and let the dryer hum around me like white noise therapy. Lily called around noon. I answered this time. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I'm awake now." She didn't speak. Then quietly, "Dad said you agreed, that it was mutual. Did I sound mutual to you at lunch?" "Number," her voice cracked. "He said it was better this way, that you were tired of the fighting." I closed my eyes. "What fighting?" I asked. "Exactly," she whispered. I didn't blame her. Not fully. She was fed the story he curated, the narrative in which I quietly bowed out, a tired woman who chose peace over presence. I'd made it too easy to believe. Always calm, always composed, always cleaning up after everyone while they walked away untouched. I'd been the infrastructure beneath his life. Quiet, reliable, replaceable, until I wasn't. That night, I got an email from Hannah. No subject line, just, "This could have stayed clean. Why are you digging?" I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Marissa. She called me within the hour. "She's nervous," she said, "which means we're close to something bigger." "Like what?" "Like someone forging your name with help from someone licensed to witness it." I didn't speak. I didn't need to. We both understood what she meant. If a notary signed off on a forged signature, there would be records. If that notary was a friend of Hannah's, or worse, on Daniel's payroll, this wouldn't just be divorce. It would be fraud. Marissa requested access to the county's notary logs. I gave her permission to pull anything tied to our address. And while she did that, I began the process of locking down everything else. I called the bank, removed Daniel's access to the emergency fund I had set up for Lily. I froze the utilities account, changed the security questions on my health insurance portal. Then I called Lily again. "If you need rent next month," I said, "I'll send it directly to your landlord." She was quiet. "Does Dad know?" "He will." A long pause. "I found something," she said, "in his desk drawer, labeled transition plan." It had a checklist. Of what? Accounts to close, names to update, and a note that said, "Begin new narrative, post-grad." I didn't cry, not this time. "Send it to me." She did. And there it was, black ink, bullet points, all under a bold heading, "Unify image, start fresh." I wasn't part of the new image. I was the erasure, the inconvenience, the version of his life he wanted deleted before Lily's next chapter began. He didn't want a wife. He wanted a clean record. But I wasn't going to vanish neatly. Not anymore. By midnight, Marissa sent one last email. The notary on our deed transfer, former coworker of Hannah's, fired in 2021 for ethics violations. Now freelancing under an expired license. The signature wasn't just forged, it was criminal. Marissa wrote, "We have a case, and it's going to court." I closed the laptop, didn't smile, didn't flinch. I just whispered, "Good." Then I opened the linen closet, pulled out a suitcase, and started folding my clothes in silence. Not because I was leaving, but because I knew soon Daniel would be the one who had to. Daniel came back on a Tuesday. I heard the garage door at 6:03 p.m. like it had never stopped working for him. He didn't knock. He didn't call out. He just entered the kitchen and opened the fridge like it still belonged to him. I stayed at the dining table, laptop open, papers spread out, legal pads lined with notes. He froze when he saw me, then smiled like I was a familiar photo he hadn't looked at in a while. "You're home early," he said. I didn't reply. He glanced at the files in front of me and something flickered behind his eyes. "What's all that?" I tilted my head. "You tell me." His smile faltered. "Emily," he said, and I hated how he said my name like it was a password. "We need to talk." You mean now? I said. Before or after I serve you? That got him. His jaw clenched. I didn't want this to get ugly. Then you shouldn't have made it ugly. He looked around like the room might soften, like the house would come to his defense. You're misunderstanding what happened. I slid the notary report across the table. Am I? He didn't touch it. This wasn't supposed to be. He paused. You were always tired, always somewhere else. So you filed for divorce behind my back? You would have dragged it out, he said quietly. I needed it clean. For Lily. For all of us. Clean, I repeated. Forged signatures. Expired notaries. Lying to the court. That's your idea of clean? He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the drawer behind him, the one that used to hold napkins and now held my printed affidavits. Don't, I said. He stopped. It's all being submitted. Tomorrow morning. This is insane. No, I said. This is legal. He leaned against the counter. You really want this in court? Public? For Lily to see? She already sees, I said. She saw it at graduation lunch. His shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked small. Not sorry, just exposed. You could have just asked me to leave, I added. You didn't have to erase me. It wasn't about erasing, he said. It was about control. And there it was, finally, the only honest thing he'd said all year. That night, I emailed Marissa everything. The confrontation, his admission, the notary file, Lily's forwarded photos of his transition plan. She called me at 10:45 p.m. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? She asked. I didn't answer right away. I was sitting on the floor of Lily's old bedroom, boxes stacked around me like sandbags. Her high school photos still pinned to the corkboard. I stared at her handwriting on the wall calendar, SAT dates, essay deadlines, dentist appointments. I thought about what it meant to rebuild in the same house where I'd been dismantled. Yes, I said finally, quietly, but yes. Marissa exhaled. Then let's begin. Over the next 3 weeks, everything moved fast. The court accepted the motion to reopen. The county launched an internal investigation into the notary. Daniel's assets were frozen, temporarily pending review of the contested documents. Our original property division was voided under suspicion of fraud, and the mortgage company put a hold on all title transfers involving our address, which meant for the first time in 2 years the house was legally uncertain. Just like us, Daniel didn't speak much after that. He moved into a short-term rental near the lake, left his tools in the garage like he might come back, left his books on the shelf like they still belonged to someone who read them. I boxed everything, labeled it, sealed it, and left it in the entryway. One night, Lily showed up unannounced. She knocked, brought Thai food, and sat cross-legged on the living room rug like she was 12 again. He told me you were vindictive, she said. That, you were building a case to ruin him. I looked at her. Am I? She shook her head. You're documenting what's true. He just never thought truth would hurt him. I smiled, but only for her. Then we ate in silence. The way people do when words aren't needed. When the air between them has already said enough. A week later, Daniel texted me. Can we talk? I replied. My attorney will contact yours. No more than that, not because I was cruel, but because I was done letting him rewrite scenes I didn't agree to act in. The day the court confirmed our hearing, I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself longer than I had in months. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I was clear. I wore navy blue, no makeup, just presence. I showed up not to fight, but to witness what happens when silence ends. Because he may have filed for dissolution, but I was the one closing the marriage. And this time, I signed everything with my own name. The courtroom was smaller than I imagined. Pale walls, a single flag in the corner, the kind of space designed not for justice but for efficiency. Daniel sat 2 rows ahead, flanked by his attorney, a man with a good suit and a bad posture. I didn't make eye contact. I sat beside Marissa. She didn't whisper strategy or give pep talks. She just handed me a notepad and a pen and said, if anything feels untrue, write it down. The judge was a woman, mid-50s, clear-eyed, no nonsense. I liked her immediately. She called the session to order with the kind of voice that could split stone. Case 22 to 8451, Palmer v. Palmer. Motion to vacate and investigate fraudulent dissolution and property division. I watched Daniel flinch when she said fraudulent. Like the word offended him more than the act. His attorney stood first. Calm, rehearsed, full of phrases like miscommunication, unfortunate oversight, and mutual understanding gone awry. He painted me as the distant wife, said Daniel handled the paperwork to protect the family from emotional distress, that I had implicitly consented through my silence, and that the forged signature, though regrettable, was an administrative shortcut with no malicious intent. I didn't look at him. I looked at the judge. Her eyes didn't move, she just took notes. Then it was Marissa's turn. She stood slowly. No theatrics, no moralizing, just exhibits. Document by document, email by email, timeline after timeline. She played the court audio of Daniel's recorded statement from our kitchen. It wasn't about erasing, his voice echoed, tinny and stripped of warmth. It was about control. He didn't know I'd recorded that moment, but I had. State law permitted it. He shifted in his seat. His attorney asked for a recess. Denied. We kept going. The judge asked questions, precise ones. Why was the respondent's address listed as her former residence? Why did the notary log not include proper identification? Why were assets liquidated before the divorce was finalized? Daniel didn't answer. His lawyer did, poorly. Marissa handed me a paper mid-session, a text Lily had forwarded Daniel's checklist. The line that read, "Begin new narrative post-grad." The judge read it, slowly, then looked up. "Mr. Palmer, can you explain what new narrative means in this context?" Silence. For the first time, Daniel looked at me, not with anger, not with guilt, but with calculation. Like he was wondering how I'd built something strong enough to threaten him. I held his gaze, calm, steady. Not because I was unafraid, but because I finally understood the kind of man I had been married to. A man who could only love from a position of advantage, who mistook my loyalty for inertia, who believed silence was agreement. The judge took it all in, then called for a brief recess. Marissa and I stepped outside. The hallway smelled like bleach and old carpet. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Empty," I said, "but clean." 20 minutes later, we returned. The judge read her ruling aloud, voice low but definitive. The dissolution was vacated. The previous division of assets void. An investigation into notary fraud was formally opened. Temporary financial protections reinstated. And an order issued barring Daniel from further alterations to shared property without joint consent. Daniel didn't speak. He didn't protest. His lawyer scribbled notes furiously. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just breathed. And for the first time in over a year, it felt like the air belonged to me. Outside the courthouse, the sun had the kind of sharp brightness that made everything too visible. Lily was waiting near a bench. She stood when she saw me. No flowers, no congratulations. Just a look of quiet understanding. "You okay?" she asked. "Getting there. He's mad," she said. "Let him be." She handed me something in an envelope. "He wanted me to give you this. Said it's everything he couldn't say out loud." I took it, held it, then handed it back. "You don't need to carry things for him anymore." She nodded, tucked the envelope back into her bag. We walked in silence toward the parking garage. Step by step, side by side. No need to explain what had shifted between us. It was in her pace, slower than usual. In her glances, less conflicted now. At my car, she hugged me tight. "You didn't deserve any of it," she whispered. "But you survived all of it." I held her for a moment longer than I had planned. Then I got in, started the engine, watched her walk away in the rearview mirror. For the first time, I didn't feel left behind. I felt ahead. Daniel's side unraveled faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, the notary admitted to falsifying multiple signatures at Hannah's request. County officials froze all documents tied to their filings from the past 3 years. A formal investigation was launched, and Hannah lost her license to practice real estate. Her name was quietly removed from 3 listings. A lawyer friend of Marissa's later told me she was being privately sued by 2 former clients. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post anything. There was no vindication party, no, "I told you so," just the simple clarity of consequence. What you build dishonestly eventually collapses under its own weight. Daniel, for his part, tried to recalibrate. He sent 2 emails through his attorney, one suggesting mediation, the other hinting that he'd be willing to settle amicably if public record was avoided. I didn't respond to either, Marissa did. 2 sentences. My client is not interested in performance-based reconciliation. We will proceed as scheduled. I read those lines 3 times, not because I doubted her, but because they felt like closure written in full sentences. Lily moved out of his apartment that same month, quietly. No announcement, just a U-Haul and a group of friends on a Saturday morning. She told him she needed space. She told me she needed distance from both of us. Not forever, she said. But I need to be my own person, Mom, without either of your shadows. I understood. I didn't ask her to visit. I didn't try to insert myself into her new address or her roommate dynamics. I just texted when I had groceries for her. Slipped gift cards under her door when I knew rent was due. I wanted her to feel freedom without abandonment, love without control. Daniel's family stayed silent. No calls, no apologies, no emails pretending they didn't know. It was easier for them to pretend I'd never existed. That the woman who had hosted their Thanksgivings, driven their children to dentist appointments, sat in hospital waiting rooms while they cried that she'd somehow been an administrative error, easily corrected. I let them think it. I let them keep their silence. I didn't need their noise. What mattered now was the quiet I could trust. My days became simple. A new job at a local clinic. Shorter hours. Less money, more peace. I planted herbs on the windowsill: basil, thyme, mint. The kitchen smelled like intention again. I sold the joint furniture, kept what was mine, replaced the mattress. Bought linen sheets. The house began to forget him, room by room. I learned the sounds of the house at night. The honest creak of wood, the gentle tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, when it wasn't trying to hold someone else's secrets. Some nights I still woke up startled, the ghost of his voice echoing in my head. Let's not make this dramatic. But I was learning that the absence of drama wasn't the same as the presence of love. Peace is not silence kept under pressure. It's the kind that breathes. One morning, while sorting old boxes, I found our wedding album, tucked under a pile of utility bills and expired coupons. I sat on the floor, opened it, page by page. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just watched the faces in the photos ours, smiling under the illusion of permanence. The vows weren't lies, but they had an expiration date. And somewhere along the way, only one of us remembered to stop pretending. I placed the album back in the box, closed it, labeled it clearly, Archive, do not reopen. That evening, Marissa called. The court date for the fraud hearing is set. Will I need to speak? I asked. Only if you want to, she said. I paused. I think I'd like to be heard, just once. Then we'll make space for that. We hung up. I stood by the window. The basil had started to flower, the scent sharp, fresh, alive. I wasn't healed, but I was growing, and that was enough for now. The courtroom was larger this time. A different building, different judge, different stakes. Fraud carried heavier consequences than divorce. Daniel walked in wearing a charcoal suit that didn't quite fit him right anymore. His hair was grayer, shoulders drawn tighter. He looked like a man who still couldn't believe he'd been caught. I sat behind Marissa, not at the table this time. I wasn't a plaintiff today. I was a witness. A name they couldn't delete this time. The prosecutor outlined the charges clearly. Falsified legal filings, forged signature, collusion with an unlicensed notary, intentional misrepresentation of marital status, and property fraud. It sounded clinical, but to me, it was the language of betrayal finally translated into something a system could acknowledge. Daniel pled not guilty. His attorney blamed miscommunication, legal misunderstanding, intentions that got ahead of process. But this time, there were receipts, and voices, and signatures that didn't match. The forensic handwriting expert testified first. She didn't smile, didn't speculate, just showed side-by-side comparisons on a screen. The loop of the Y is extended unnaturally. The pressure point on the M is inconsistent. The tail of the R lacks habitual curvature. The judge nodded, unimpressed by excuses. Then came the county clerk. The notary had been warned before, once in 2021, again in early 2022. Both times dismissed quietly, but both documented. She shouldn't have been allowed to sign anything, and yet she had. Then it was my turn. I stood, took the oath, and sat down facing a room full of people who once thought I would stay silent. I wasn't dramatic, I wasn't vengeful, I just spoke. My husband filed for divorce without telling me. He altered my name on property records. He had documents signed by someone else using my name. He erased me from my own life without giving me the dignity of a conversation. The room was quiet, no gasps, no interruptions, just stillness. I looked at Daniel. He couldn't meet my eyes. For the first time, I felt something close to grief, but not for the marriage. For the version of myself who had once begged for scraps of honesty from a man who specialized in withholding. I'm not asking for revenge, I added. I just want my name to mean something again. On paper, in memory, in whatever future I have left. The judge thanked me. I stepped down. Marissa squeezed my arm as I passed. The trial lasted 3 days. By the end, the court ruled the forged documents invalid. Daniel was fined, sanctioned, and barred from initiating any new legal filings involving shared assets without third-party review. The notary lost her bond and faced a separate civil suit. But none of that was the part that mattered most. What mattered was that my name was back, on the deed, on the tax records, on the legal record. It was mine again. And this time, it couldn't be moved without my knowing. Outside the courthouse, the sky was soft with late autumn light. Lily waited by the steps. She didn't smile, but she walked toward me and took my hand. You showed up, she said. I had to. Not everyone would. Not everyone gets the chance to come back. She squeezed my hand once. We stood there for a moment, letting the noise of the city move around us without needing to react. I didn't feel victorious. I felt real. And sometimes, that's the bigger win. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, made myself tea, basil and lemon. The house smelled warm, honest. I opened my laptop. No emails from Daniel, no new filings, no silent edits to my life. Just quiet, just mine. I closed my eyes and breathed, and in that breath, I finally understood. I hadn't fought to get him back. I'd fought to get myself back, and I had. Fully, legally, irreversibly. 3 months later, a letter arrived. No return address, no handwriting on the envelope, just my name, typed in all caps, like a reminder. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Thank you for not burning it all down. That was it. No signature, no apology. Just that one sentence, as if restraint was some sort of favor I'd done for him. I placed the letter back inside, folded carefully, and slid it into the drawer with the warranties and expired coupons. I didn't need to shred it. Let it sit there. Let it yellow. Let time erase it the way he once tried to erase me. That afternoon, I opened every window in the house. The air was crisp, a wind sharp enough to lift the curtains off their stillness. The kind of wind that carries everything not nailed down. I walked through each room slowly, touching the edges of things I used to clean in silence, organize for others, preserve without being asked. A photo frame with Lily's 5th grade art award, the corner where Daniel used to pile unopened mail. The dining table with 3 chairs now, instead of 4. This house was mine again. Not because a judge said so, but because I stayed. I stayed when I had every reason to disappear. I didn't retaliate. I didn't set fire to what he left behind. I simply rebuilt, brick by brick, truth by truth. There's a dignity in not needing to be loud, a kind of strength that no one thanks you for, but you feel it when you close the door at night and everything inside finally answers to your name. Lily visits more often now. We don't talk about the trial, or the years that frayed behind it. She brings over laundry, steals leftovers. Sometimes she sits at the counter and watches me cook, quiet but present. That's all I need. One evening she asked, "Do you ever miss him?" I stirred the soup. I miss who I thought he was, but that person never actually existed. I just filled in the blanks. She nodded, like she understood. You don't seem angry anymore. That's because I'm not holding anything for him anymore, not even anger. She smiled, said nothing, just stayed in the room while the soup simmered. That's how healing works. It doesn't arrive loudly, it comes in presence, in silence that no longer hurts. I started writing again. Not books, not blogs, just notes, to myself. In a notebook I keep in the kitchen drawer. Things I want to remember, things I never want to forget. One of them reads, "When someone tries to erase you, don't disappear, become permanent." Another reads, "You can lose everything and still keep your name, if you fight for it." Sometimes I wonder if Daniel tells people the truth now, if he admits what he did, or if I'm just another complicated story he shrugs off at dinner parties. It doesn't matter. I no longer need the truth from him. I have it for myself. I keep the final court ruling in a folder labeled Resolved. I keep my signature next to it, real and sharp, in black ink. Not for revenge, just for proof. The kind you don't need until someone tries to rewrite you. But most of all, I keep the napkin. The one from graduation lunch. Folded neatly in a jewelry box. Lipstick still faint on the corner, a quiet reminder of the day the lie fell apart, and the truth walked back in. Not with fury, not with noise, just with me. Standing, present, unmoved, at peace.